Find me in the woods. Act 1. Shell in the surf.
I come back every year, on the day, at the hour, the minute my son died. I stand here, in the middle of the woods among the trees next to the border, alone. Until one day, I wasn't alone. I think it must be what people describe as death. Cloaked in black, carrying something resembling a scythe. But his face, it's not a face. It's a mirror, molded over top a face. That is, if there's a face behind it at all. It distorts the world it reflects. And when I stood not but a few steps away, I could see a malformed reflection of myself stretched across it. I felt frozen in its gaze. To stare into its face gave me the distinct conviction that I was seeing the world through its own eyes. And I knew that my life, my being, did not matter to it. My life was an object of curiosity, something it only might be interested in. My whole body went numb. Whenever I have walked along the shore of the ocean and casually inspected shells washed up in the surf, that was the feeling. Except I was the shell in the surf. Then, as disinterested as I had been in tossing the fragment of shell back into the wet sand, I felt myself released from its attention. It stood as still as the boulder next to us. The trees swayed in the wind as if to distinguish themselves. I stared at it for only a moment, but as soon as I could feel my legs again, I ran. But I came back the next year. I was convinced that I had hallucinated the entire scene. I had been possessed by the loss of my son, and my mind had concocted something to distract it, something to save it. If it could not quench my grief, it would distract it. It would terrify it. It would make me run away. But I came back to remember my son. And again, one moment was different from the next. I was alone. And then I was not. The being once again held me captive in its sight. I could feel it studying me, searching for something. Then I was tossed back to the shore. I would be left alone to stare at it, to yell at it, and even throw stones at it, only for it to show not even the slightest tilt of its head. Every year, I kept coming back. The years would pass like they were only a matter of days, but the few moments it held me in its attention felt like an eternity. Decades passed, until one year I realized I struggled to reach the spot in the woods where my son had died. I lost my balance twice, and proceeded forward with a significant amount of mud and grass staining my jeans. Then I waited. I checked my watch, counting down until the minute the entity would arrive. And then, one moment I was alone, and the next I was not. Then I was wrapped up in the being's gaze one more time, and I felt it move away the thoughts in my mind as if it was clearing away sand. And suddenly, I realized I had forgotten that I came here because my son had died. I had forgotten my son. Then everything went black. I was not tossed back to the shore this time.
Act 2. Without a word. I've woken up with the sun every single day for the past 36 years. My role in society does not ask I be prompt. I tend to the grounds of a town so small that it fits on my arm, and with my opposite index finger I trace the paths of its people as they circulate to an instinctive rhythm. Here and there I appear and do my work, and do it well. I am a transient with a permanent home just off the road. Whether I want to be here is immaterial, and there is no such thing as need beyond that which pertains to the existential. I am here because that's where I live. This morning I rose well before the sun, having plucked a jolting lucidity from the ether, but having nothing readily apparent at which to aim this now consciousness. Knowing better than to swim against this rather peculiar current of fate, I began my morning routine, laying the day's attire upon the bed and walking to the icebox to retrieve a small meal. As I reached for the lid, I paused. The superstitious believe that you can feel focal observation on the tips of your hairs that then lurches along those same strands and chills the skin. And, much in that same way, I grew cold. I leapt to the front door with an urgency that rekindled my long-dormant sense of surprise, allowing myself to be slightly soothed by the feel of a corroded metallic handle in my grasp. It's something tactile and familiar in a world that is suddenly abstract and foreign. I opened the door. Before me stood a man not from this town, nor was he one of the infrequent but consistent passers-by that conduct marginal business dealings in loosely adjacent communities. His was a new face, and without a word exchanged between us, I knew that I was to show this man where he will die. He spoke to me, but I resisted his words. His speech is for expounding and shaping thoughts of the present, and our bond lies outside of temporal framing. I closed the door in front of him and donned my cloak, knowing that he would remain there at his place just outside the threshold when I returned. He did. I silently walked by him to the side of the shed where I keep my tools for tilling, mixing, and otherwise moving the earth in my own small way. After picking out a tall, sturdy planter, I shifted my weight against it and turned once more to look this man in the eyes. Here we are. We nod and set out, heading straight toward the line of trees in the east, over which the sun begins to stain the sky. Shell in the Surf was written and narrated by Christopher Guarnera. Without a Word was written and narrated by Zach Davis, that's me. I also did the music for today's episode. Thanks for listening.